Okay, Gerhart is going to read next. Another local writer. Thank you.
I'll read quickly, shall I? This story is going back to 1977 when I lived in a house with some other people who, before that, lived in hospitals with high walls. Oh, you can't say that! You are awful! I know this is about a particular person. Betty didn't know it then, but she would soon be moving. The dormitory was smaller than any of the others, only 24 beds. Each bed looked exactly the same. Each bedspread was pink, some more faded than others. Where you could express your personality was on top of your bedside cabinet. The ornaments came from relatives, where there were any, or where relatives had kept in touch. But most likely they came from Oxfam. Betty had a Staffordshire clown holding a little poodle. She loved it. Every morning a blue fluffy duster would remove the slightest speck of dust. Except on Sundays. There was no time. Getting ready for the service took longer. The clown and the poodle had to wait until the next day. They were allowed a picture in a picture frame. Some had a photo of parents who had died long ago, and some of a sibling or a nephew had never visited. Too embarrassed or just didn't care. Betty didn't know who her family was. She had a picture of Mary holding Jesus. That's even better than family, she thought. The nurse called Betty into office. Betty was troubled, was no trouble. She had no behavioural issues, as they might say today. All the nurses liked her, and she liked all the nurses. All except for Matron. Matron was fierce. Matron told you things you didn't want to hear. Matron told you off. How can you say that? Oh, you are awful. It sounded as though it was straight out of a comedy sketch, and Betty liked it when she made the nurses laugh. She would get a cuddle or a gentle pat on the head, and then this. Betty, the nurse said, you know, this is your home. Betty had no memory of life outside the high walls. She could not imagine any other life. The radio and increasingly television brought an idea of a different life, lived by people she would never meet. Not in the street. She had never stood in a real street, and not in someone else's home either. She'd never been invited inside someone else's actual house. There were bus trips in the hospital coach, clearly marked mental health authority. She'd look out of the windows, but it was just like watching TV, except the chair wobbled a bit and you moved sideways when going around the corner. On that one trip to the seaside, a member of the public talked to her. She was so startled she didn't know what to say, and by the time she thought of something, the gentleman had gone. The thing is, Betty, you're going to move to a lovely house. You can choose your own duvet cover, and the people there are friendly and looking forward to meeting you. Mrs. Royce from your new home is coming for a visit tomorrow. You have to put on your Sunday best. The end of the conversation. The end of the conversation that would change her life. She wasn't asked, she was told. Betty wanted to cry, but nurse would only tell her off. She had lived here for 49 years. She had never been told, but her mother was not married when she had Betty. So Betty was taken away immediately after birth, and her mother put into care until the age of 18, and then discharged and left to her own devices. Good luck, and be good, were the well-meaning, meaningless words as they sent her on her way. She met a nice young man, and then another, and then lots of nice men, some quite old, but she was never allowed to keep any of the money. And then she became ill, very ill. At her deathbed, she asked to see her daughter. It was deemed inappropriate. Mrs. Royce was kind. She smiled. She asked if Betty would like to move to a new home. Betty wasn't used to being asked. certainly not to be being given a choice. She looked at Nurse to read in her face what the right answer would be. "Can I bring my ornamental clown?" "That would be very nice," Mrs. Royce told her. That settled them. Betty shared her bedroom with another 23 women. She knew them all, but they weren't friends. When she left, all said goodbye, one or two with tears. There were lots of hugs. Nurse gave her a present, a cuddly toy. The old one, a teddy, was worn out from too many hugs and kisses. Matron said goodbye and good luck. Betty shook her hand. Nurse gave her a hug, which in front of Matron was not the right thing to do. And then Nurse said, "We all love you and we will think of you." "Oh, how can you say that? You are awful." She travelled in a car, not a bus. The new home was small, no bigger than a village primary school. She was shown her new bedroom, a large room subdivided into 6 cubicles. Hers was the one by the window. Her own bedroom with a beautiful green curtain, which she was allowed to pull shut if she wanted to. Mary, the young woman in the next cubicle, helped her unpack. Her belongings, everything she owned in this life of 49 years, fitted into a medium-sized suitcase. Everything was labelled, the Staffordshire clown and his poodle by the side, and Mary and Jesus taking up residence on the wall opposite the window. Mary had been given the important job of helping Betty to settle and show where everything was. That afternoon, they went into the garden, and Betty sat on the bench. She looked at the garden, and she looked at the street. The street with people walking on pavements, cars driving past and houses with shops across the road. Betty started to shiver. Then she felt very hot, and the screaming began. There was no wall. If she was so minded, she could leave the garden. She could cross the road. She could go to the shop, and it wasn't like a tuck shop in the hospital. Betty screamed, and Mary sat beside her, held her hand, put her arms around her shoulders, and gently stroked her hair. She also talked to her, anything that came into her head, anything soothing, anything reassuring. Mary was an old hand at this by now. She moved from a large hospital 12 months ago. She knew the signs, and she knew how to help. "How can you say that? Oh, you are awful." She didn't know it 6 months ago when she sat in the garden screaming, but now she's working in the shop across the road. She crosses the road on her own after making her own breakfast. She's stacking shelves, and she loves talking to customers. She knows where everything is kept, absolutely everything. She has never been caught out. Pete keeps on trying. "I bet you don't know where anchovies are kept." "How can you say that? Oh, you are awful."
Okay, another local poet, Colin Gregory. Thank you. Great.
I'm not going to make any excuses for being a sentimental old twit, but I have a strong interest in 2 things: local history and the Welsh language. And like Mike, I'm going to read a Welsh poem. Nick, I should have said, not Mike. So if you excuse me, Nick. I lived in my early days, I'm 76 this year, and most of the time on the banks of the Mid-Glamorgan Canal, and I've been very interested in the history of it and the connection of the effect of it on local history between Merthyr and Cardiff. And because I lived in Clwb on the banks of the canal, I've got strong memories of it, up until 1970 when the A470 came through there. So this poem is called Camlas Contaf. It's in Welsh, and it's basically a series of memories that I had growing up. Fan hyn, roedd y gamlas yn crwydro, trwy'r maisydd gerllaw. Baibio capeli a ffactriaeth y blaw. Fan hyn, roedd bad bach y cwm, a melod yn tynnu ei llwyth a'r trwm. O'r diffoedd byw i welais i hwylo, ti o'n melod glir fan hyn. Baibio i'n efael dan y bont, ei ffyrnys go ffyrnig ei gweithio'r môr ffrwnt. Fan hyn. O bryd i'w gilydd trwy niwl bore bach, tu allan yn sgrechian fel gwygan neu brach. Ac wedyn ar wyliau'r plant troelio trwy'r dydd, ei llaesau yn canu a mynau a ffydd. Beth bynnag y tywydd, yn sych neu yn llaeth, ni welod problemau dyfodol bob taith fan hyn. Part of our local history, of course, is castles. We have many, many castles in Wales, and the one that I've always been interested in is Castell Morgraig above the Caerphilly Mountain. No lack of courage beneath this wall where Albion would be denied, and fealty was at the door with history on her side. No songs of praise or platitudes for Ivor Bach's last stand, a timeless blanket of moss and leaves on Llywelyn Bren's right hand. No meadow sweet or larkspur, no linnet in this tower, but planted beech and giant oak to hide the final hour. No memorial stone from Cadw to show a son had died, a host of golden daffodils, and another nation lied. It's a difficult thing sometimes for men to have a daughter. They are very, very complicated creatures sometimes. And they actually... This poem I've written is about my daughter Claire. She's 50 now, nearly. And this is basically in rapid succession, like a life story of a history. A baby, a child, adolescent, adult, teen member, gang member, rockin' mod cult, frustrating, annoying, demanding the truth, untidy, indulgent, noisy, aloof, exciting, impatient, emotional, grim. Will change anything on a thought or a whim. Secretive, depressing, generous, divine. A victim, a patient, a daughter. She's mine.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. This is sort of local poem because I think this guy is from Ponty originally, and he used to come to Merthyr dressed up in different guises, and he just disappeared. So maybe the local people can tell me what happened to him. This is my favourite of all his guises. Hitchcock's brother. My missus and little daughter went into Walter's photos downtown, totally gobsmacked when they seen him. Black suit and tie, a white shirt, like he was a funeral director. Except he wore a white wig, had a cushion stuffed down his trousers, sunglasses just like a gangster, with a standout sign hanging round his neck, proclaiming, David Hitchcock. Can you take my photo, love? He asked the shop girl. My little daughter goes up to him. Who are you then? I'm David Hitchcock, he replies, brother of Alfred, the film director. Meant nothing to my daughter. Now if he'd say Paddington Bear, I weren't surprised when they told me, because I seen him loads of times. Mexican Dave down Tesco's with his floppy sombrero, Cowboy Dave in his Stetson, and Policeman Dave down a precinct with two proper coppers pissing themselves, and always the dangly placard. So when she's older and reading film studies at a uni in Merthyr, my little daughter will be able to boast, Alfred Hitchcock, that great auteur, yeah, I met his brother. Okay, this is a local poem as well. My wife teaches in Forest, and my daughter used to go to Evan James. She now goes to Gartholwg. And I think it was about 10 years ago, and my wife's school was surrounded by water, and my daughter had to be evacuated from Evan James, so I had to come and fetch her. And this is basically, we can see it happening now, can't we? This, let's say 10 years ago. This is living in times to come. Every day now, more so, living in times to come. Beginning with messages, late August oak leaves falling brown, blown in prophecies. The rain that turns houses into caravans, manhole covers sucked up, landslides toppling trees, covering railways, roads submerged under a muddy deluge, bridges collapsing like brittle branches, schools becoming islands in a morning, as panicky pupils become evacuees, ordered to march to higher ground. This weather weirding, more sinister. We take the slow bus home, climbing up to the mountain tops, looking down on a chasm of cloud. The patterned piles of dry stone walls, with leaning blocks in lines, more resolute than many homes. Sandbags gushed aside like a tide on dunes. Upturned umbrellas, dead crows on paving stones. The future, rapping at every pane, to be let in. And this one's like a maniacal UKIP, now Tory poem. They're coming, 29 million. Didn't really happen, did it? Romanians and Bulgarians are coming, 29 million of them. Shiploads across the channel. We cannot stop them. How many Dimitar Berbatovs will be among them? They'll bring their horse meat with them. More contamination. Like Vlad the Impaler, like vampires from Transylvania. I've been to Sunny Beach. I know those shady dealers. Bulgarians and Romanians are coming. Not just Romanies on the run, flogging their big issues, but the real thing this time. They'll be taking all the jobs we haven't got. The council housing, which is being sold off. Opening unpronounceable shops. They'll be living off benefits and working on fruit farms. There'll be gangs of pickpockets converging on every town. They're coming, 29 million, to suck red blood from the union. I've got nothing against them as people, but there's just no room. Oh, this counts. I think this counts as a Ponty poem because the train sort of goes through Ponty Island in this for ages. Okay, so I think I'm entitled to do this one. Okay, train time. Kick the cans. Who's gonna win? Shaven-headed rugby fans. Train time. Train time. Knock it back. Get it down. Who's gonna be everyone's clown? Sitting on a platform, frayed coat and shoes. Gazing at the brochures, bright holiday hues. Couple on the floor, low as you can get. Any spare cash, mister? Still joking wet. There's a cheer from a park. There's coal on a line. There's boys that go anywhere. Train time, train time. Announcer with a posh voice and a lip shine load. Women with bags and kids pulling to and fro. Stepping through a doorways, stepping on the scales. The weight of the distance, an arrow never fails. You can bring home the feathers to make you look fine while the pigeons are picking. Train time, train time. Train's getting faster now. Stopped. Okay. Okay, just a short break and then Jamie Bell.
That was brilliant. Yes. Yeah, we just I can't remember.
Yeah.
Just wet.